I didn't lose sleep over the first incident report with my name on it. It was the second one that scared me. Not because of what it claimed I'd done, but because it described a trip I simply don't remember taking. According to the summary, I had completed a transport at 3:17 a.m. from the emergency department up to imaging. It listed my badge ID, the patient's initials, the start and end times, even the elevator car number, like it was reading a script it was proud of. At 3:17 a.m., I was on my lunch break. The system insisted I'd been in that elevator car, alone, with a sedated patient whose face I still can't bring into focus. Every time I try, the features smear in my head, like someone rubbed their thumb across a still wet photo. I know how that sounds. Glitchy software, badge reader out of sync, wrong staff ID pulled into the report. That's what security said. That's what risk management circled around without ever saying out loud. "We just need you to walk us through your recollection, Mr. Monroe," they kept repeating, as if the right kind of pressure might squeeze a missing memory back into place. So let me walk you through it the way I remember it, before the logs and the write-ups and the recommendations for improvement. My name's Adrian, but everyone at the hospital called me AJ. I worked nights as patient transport at a mid-sized medical center in Essex County, just off the turnpike. If you've ever driven past one of those brick and glass blocks with a helipad on top and an ambulance bay that always smells like cold diesel and wet concrete, you know the kind of place. My job wasn't glamorous. I pushed beds and wheelchairs. I took people who were scared or sedated or half asleep from point A to point B, down to CT, across to MRI, up to telemetry, back to the lobby when they were finally allowed to go home. If the ED wanted a bed freed up, they paged transport. If bed management wanted someone out of observation, they paged transport. If radiology was backed up, they paged us with that soft, fake polite urgency you only hear from people who are grading you behind the scenes. On a good night, it felt like being part of a machine that almost worked. On a bad night, it felt like being the conveyor belt in a shredder. Here's the thing people don't talk about when they talk about hospitals. The whole building is obsessed with time. Time to triage, time to first antibiotic, time from order to scan, time between arrival and discharge. Everything is measured, compared, turned into little green, yellow, red blocks on dashboards only managers ever see. The pressure leaks downward. It gets into your shoes. You start shaving corners, and you tell yourself it's for the patient. That's how the East Service elevator became my elevator. The hospital had a bank of public elevators in the central lobby. They were slow, crowded, and always stopping on the wrong floors, so a lost visitor could wander out, realize they'd landed in maternity instead of oncology, and jam the door with an elbow while they argued on the phone. Then there were the staff elevators. The one near the ED was officially for authorized personnel, but after visiting hours, the badge reader only really cared about the color of your ID card. You tapped, waited for the little halo of green to blink around the slot, and went about your business. If you didn't have the right color, you waited for somebody who did. East Service was tucked around a corner past a custodial closet where a crash cart stuck out half an inch into the hallway, its wheels permanently squeaking. The elevator doors were scuffed steel, the panels dented from years of gurney impacts. The call button was mounted a little crooked, like someone had yanked it too hard during an emergency, and engineering had never had time to fix it properly. The first time I used e-service, I was behind. Marla, the charge nurse in the ED that night, waved me over with one of those tight, not quite smiles that mean you're already in trouble. "Room 10 needs to go to CT, like yesterday," she said. "Radiology is already calling. I need that bed cleared if another trauma rolls in." I checked my list. I still had a discharge to bring downstairs, a patient to take to dialysis, and a post-op that should have gone back to the floor half an hour ago. "Do I have an escort?" I asked. Marla glanced at the monitors, the waiting room board, the line of ambulance stretchers stacked like planes on a runway. "CT knows they're coming," she said. "He's stable. Just take east, it's faster. We're drowning here, AJ." Faster is magic in a place like that. Faster means you're not the reason some block turns red on somebody's dashboard. Faster means saving face, even when you're not actually saving anyone's life. So I said, okay. I loaded the patient, double-checked the rails, wrapped the blanket tighter around his shoulders. He was sleepy but conscious enough to mutter about hating small spaces. I told him it would be quick. It usually was. We cut through the back hallway, dimmer lights, the smell of disinfectant and warm dust. A wet floor sign propped open an EVS closet door. A radio played low from inside, just the faint thump of bass and a woman singing in Spanish. Lila from housekeeping stepped aside with her mop and gave me a little nod. "You going up?" she asked. "CT," I said. She jerked her chin toward the end of the hall. "Use east. Public ones are stuck again." I should have stopped right there and asked what she meant by again. I didn't. I was counting minutes. The call button felt slightly gritty under my thumb. I pressed it. Somewhere behind the wall, metal clanked, like the building was clearing its throat. Above the door, the little indicator flickered red, died, then came back as a flat, pale glow. I noticed that. And then I immediately talked myself out of noticing it. "Old building," I told the patient. "Sometimes it coughs." When the doors slid open, the air inside the car was a few degrees cooler, with that strange metallic tang you only ever smell in elevators and inside vending machines when you're reaching in for a soda. The floor was a patchwork of scratched linoleum squares, their edges curling slightly, every mark a story about wheels and shoes and things I didn't want to picture. I pushed the bed in, locked the wheels, and hit the button for the imaging floor. The panel looked like every other elevator panel in the hospital. Numbers, an alarm, a little slot for the fireman's key. No hidden symbols, no "abandon hope" in Sharpie. Just fingerprints and a smear where countless thumbs had worn down the plastic. What was different, now that I think about it, was the indicator over the door. Every other elevator had a clear square that lit up with a number. B for basement, 1 for lobby, 2, 3, 4, and so on. East service had the same little window. When I looked up, though, it was just glowing a flat, ugly off-white. No number, no letter, just on. I frowned, thumb still resting on the rail. "That's new," I muttered. The patient shifted, eyes half open. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just a sticky light." I could have stepped out. I could have pushed him back into the hallway, told Marla the elevator was acting weird, called maintenance, used the main bank and risked being 5 minutes late. None of that flashed through my head. All I could see was the mental timer I'd built for myself ticking down. All I could hear was Marla's voice. "We're drowning here." The doors slid shut with a soft, rubbery thump. The car shuddered once and began to rise. I felt it in my knees and in the way the bed pressed a little heavier into my hands. The blank light over the door stayed the same featureless glow. Sometimes they don't update the display, I told myself, as long as we stop on the right floor. And that time, we did. The doors opened onto the familiar hallway outside imaging. Muted lights, a row of folded wheelchairs, the soft electronic beeping leaking from CT. The indicator flickered as the doors parted, and just for a heartbeat before it cut out, I could have sworn I saw a shape instead of a number. Not a letter, not anything I recognized, just a curve, like the top of a zero that never closed. I blinked, and the square went dark. Everything after that was forgettable in the way routine work is forgettable. I dropped the patient off. I signed the form they handed me. I took a different elevator back down and finished my other assignments. If the building tried something that night, I ignored it. The first incident report with my name on it showed up a week later, after a fall in East Service. It was ugly, but explainable. We'd been going from PACU back up to the floor. Post-op, groggy but following commands. I remember locking the wheels. I swear I do. The car was between floors when it gave this odd little sideways shiver. Not up, not down, just a twitch. The bed rolled half an inch despite the brakes. My body reacted before my brain. I grabbed the rail and planted my feet. Still felt the weight slide. By the time we stopped and the doors opened, the patient's arm had slipped just low enough to smack the edge of the frame. Bruised by morning. The write-up called it unstable transport technique. I signed that report. I could feel that one in my palms and knees. I remembered the way the rail dug into my hand, the sound the patient made. The second report came after the phantom transport at 3:17 a.m. The elevator log claimed it had taken me somewhere I never remember going. The summary insisted my badge had called the car, selected a floor, opened its doors. You can probably guess which elevator that was. What you might not guess is what the equipment section decided to call it. Not East Service, not ES-02. On that neat little printed line, like a quiet accusation, the elevator's name had changed. The form said the ride had been completed using something the system now referred to as porter. The first time I saw that word in writing, my brain skated right over it. I was sitting in the tiny conference room off the ED, the one with the two bright fluorescent lights and the crooked whiteboard that still had Hand Hygiene Month ghosted underneath whatever anyone wrote on top of it. The risk management guy had printed the incident report and slid it across the table like he was dealing bad news as quietly as possible. "The equipment section," he said, tapping the paper with his pen. "Can you confirm this is the elevator you used?" I glanced down. The form was the usual hospital template. Date, time, patient initials, origin, destination, my name in neat block capitals. All of that blurred past until my eyes snagged on the last part. There was a line near the bottom that talked about which elevator had been used. It said I'd completed the transport using something called porter, and in parentheses it added the same car ID I knew belonged to the East Service elevator. I remember thinking, oh, they renamed East Service. Some internal code change, and that was it. It didn't even register as strange until much later, when I tried to picture the elevator and that word in my head at the same time and couldn't make them fit. Back then, I just swallowed, nodded like a good employee and said, "That's the East Service elevator, the one by the custodial closet." The risk guy, Liam, I think, made another careful little note. He had the face of someone who'd practiced looking neutral in the mirror. "You're certain you were on your lunch break at 3:17 a.m.? he asked. "Yes," I said. "I heat my food in the staff lounge on 2 North. It takes about 3 minutes for the microwave to pretend it's cooking. I was watching the timer." "Anyone with you?" His tone made it sound like an innocent question. It wasn't. My shoulders tightened. That was the angle, right there. Not, maybe this system is wrong. Not, That's odd. We should check the logs again. Just, are you sure you're not misremembering, Mr. Monroe? Samir from security, I said. He was checking a badge issue on the lounge door. You can ask him. Liam's pen paused, then scribbled. We will, he said. He slid the report back toward me and tapped the line at the bottom. The summary paragraph just above the signature talked about process deviation, unauthorized solo transport, and inconclusive recollection. I don't remember taking that patient, I said quietly. I understand, he replied, in a tone that said he didn't. This isn't punitive. We're just trying to reconstruct what happened. According to that report, what had happened was simple. I had taken a sedated cardiac patient from the ED up to telemetry, by myself using East Service. The badge reader said my card had pinged the panel. The elevator controller said the car had been called from the ED level and opened on telemetry. The charting system showed an order marked in progress at 3:10 and arrived at 3:23 with my initials beside the word transport. I was not in that elevator at 3:17, I said. My mouth felt dry. I was eating leftover rigatoni and watching 3 minutes crawl by on a microwave. Sometimes stress can affect our perception of time, Liam said. And you'd had a prior incident on the same elevator earlier that week, correct? That was the bruise case, the fall. Yeah, I said. That one I remember. I remembered it in my body. The bite of the rail against my palm as the bed shifted, the sideways shudder of the car, the sound the patient made when her arm caught the frame. That report had called it unstable transport technique too, like it was just a fancy way of saying I'd screwed up. Sitting in that conference room with the second report in front of me, my pulse beating in my ears, I tried again anyway. If there's a software issue, I said, if the system is logging my badge wrong, we'll have facilities and IT look into the hardware, Liam cut in smoothly. In the meantime, we're updating the recommendation that high-risk patients not be transported solo in that elevator. Do you feel you can adhere to that guideline? Guideline landed between us like a bad joke. In theory, yes. In theory, high-risk patients always had an escort, a nurse, a tech, somebody. In practice, it depended on who was drowning harder that night. I'll do my best, I said, because there wasn't a checkbox for anything more honest. After the meeting, I didn't go straight back to the floor. My feet carried me down to the security office instead, that dim little nerve center near the loading dock where the air always smelled like coffee and overheated plastic. Samir was hunched over his wall of monitors when I pushed the door open, one hand wrapped around a foam cup, the other flicking the mouse from camera to camera. Grainy black and white squares showed empty hallways, parking levels, the ambulance bay, an elevator lobby. Hey, AJ, he said without looking up. They beat you up in there? Depends what you call beating, I said. Got a minute? He grunted, which counted as yes. I dragged a spare stool over beside him. My eyes went to a small status screen mounted off to the side. A simple list of elevator cars showing their locations, numbers, and cryptic fault codes. Can you pull logs from East Service? I asked. Again? He finally glanced over. I already had to send a stack to Risk after your first tango in there. This is about the second one, I said. The ghost ride. He made a face. Don't say ghost in here, the system listens. He set his coffee down and typed a few commands. On one monitor, lines of text started to scroll. Timestamps, car identifiers, floors, directions, door status. He squinted and pointed at one line. Here, 317, same car. Call from the ED level, doors close, travel up, doors open on 4. No errors. He tapped the overlay in the corner. Badge system agrees. It says your card woke the reader a few seconds before the call. As far as the software is concerned, you were there, man. I stared at the text. The origin line named the ED/imaging access level. The destination line named telemetry. It all looked so clean. What about the elevator's name? I asked. Samir frowned. What name? The label, I said. The report called it Porter. He flipped into a different configuration screen. A list of elevators with their internal names. Lobby 1, Lobby 2, North Staff, Garage Lower. Then, mid-list, one entry that made my stomach drop. There it was. Porter. In parentheses, the same ES02 I already knew. Since when does it say that? I asked. Samir leaned closer. Huh, he said. That's new. New as in you just noticed it? I said. Or new as in it wasn't there last week? He navigated through a couple of buried menus, muttering under his breath. The interface was the usual hospital IT mess. Gray boxes, tiny fonts, buttons that looked the same whether you needed them or not. Config log says that car got a firmware update, he said. Old alias East Service, new alias Porter. Guess somebody in facilities got poetic. Why? I pressed. He lifted a shoulder. Vendor default? Some smart building nonsense. They don't exactly invite me to those meetings. On the screen, the word porter sat there like it belonged, a simple, old-fashioned word. Someone who carries your bags, someone who lifts the weight for you. Can you change it back? I asked. Technically, yeah, he said. Practically, if I rename it manually, IT will overwrite me next time they push a patch, and Risk will ask why their logs don't match. You really think what they call the car matters? I didn't know how to explain the knot in my gut to him. All I had was the feeling that this wasn't just cosmetic. The report says I used an elevator I don't remember touching, I said. Now that elevator suddenly has a name nobody remembers giving it. That feels like it matters. Samir studied me for a second, then sighed. Look, he said, if you're worried, don't ride it solo. Ask for a buddy. There's no rule against that. There's no staffing for that, I said. You know, nights. He spread his hands in a helpless little shrug, then clicked out of the menu. Porter vanished back into the list. Eyes open, he said. If it glitches again, hit the alarm. I'll pull the feed. He meant the red button inside the car. I pictured pressing it, felt my stomach clench at the thought of hanging between floors with a patient staring at me. Sure, I said. I'll do that. That night, I tried to avoid East Service altogether. I took the main elevators, even when that meant waiting behind visitors with strollers and volunteers with supply carts. I went the long way. I added 10, 15 minutes to routes that could have been 5. By 2 in the morning, the ED was a mess. Marla caught me near the nurses' station, her scrubs wrinkled and her eyes lined in caffeine. AJ, why are you coming back from CT through the main lobby? She demanded. Radiology's complaining. East Service is acting up, I said. Risk wants us cautious on solos. This guy wasn't high risk, she shot back. He was belly pain with a contrast allergy. We're holding admits in hall beds because turnaround is trash tonight. I need you to cut time, not add laps. I'm trying not to get anyone hurt, I said. I heard the edge in my voice and forced it down. And I'm trying not to get written up again. Her expression softened just a little. I know, she said. Believe me, I'd love a world where every policy and every shift actually matched. But I've got an ICU hold coming and no beds. Can you please use East for the next telebed? Take someone who can walk if it makes you feel better. Framed like that, it sounded reasonable, not a command, a favor wrapped in desperation. Okay, I said after a beat. 1 ambulatory. No sedation, no lines. Deal, she said. 10 minutes later, I was walking a middle-aged guy with stable chest pain down the back hallway toward East Service. His telemetry pack beeped softly at his hip. He shuffled in those grippy hospital socks, one hand on the rail. You look more nervous than I feel, he joked. Just tired, I said. Long night. We turned the corner. The crash cart was still sticking out of the closet. The call button for East Service glowed faintly in the dim. I pressed it. There was that same clank from behind the wall. The indicator above the doors woke, flickered, and settled into a blank, milky rectangle of light. No number, no letter, just that wrong, featureless glow. Did you see that? I asked before I could stop myself. See what? He said. Nothing, I lied. This thing just likes to be dramatic. When the doors opened, a draft of cooler air rolled out, bringing that familiar mix: oil, warm machinery, something sharp and chemical, and under it, a whiff of rubber gloves that had been on too many hands. We stepped in. As the doors slid shut, the small display beside them came alive. Tiny green letters flickered for the briefest moment, like it was sending a text only I was close enough to read. For half a second, the message said Porter was ready and waiting. Then the panel blinked and went blank again, as if it had thought better of talking to me out loud. If I'd blinked at the wrong moment, I might have missed it. The little panel by the elevator doors flashed a line of pale green text, the kind of thing only staff ever notice, and for a heartbeat it spelled out exactly what the car thought of itself. It told me Porter was ready. Then the words disappeared, like it had cleared its throat and decided not to finish the sentence. Did you see that? I asked. My patient squinted at the blank plastic. See what? Nothing, I said, just thought it said something else. He shrugged. As long as it gets me where I'm going, man, it can call itself whatever it wants. He stepped into the car. I followed, one hand on the IV pole, the other hovering near the rail like maybe I could hold the whole box steady if it tried something. The doors slid shut. The world narrowed to metal walls, our breathing, and the soft mechanical hum under our feet. I hit the button for telemetry. The light glowed obediently. The car started moving. The smell was stronger inside. Oil, hot wiring, rubber, and that faint powdery note that reminds you someone has been wiping these surfaces down for years. It felt like being inside a piece of equipment that had worked too hard for too long and knew it. Work nights a lot? The guy asked, fingers hooked around the rail. Yeah, I said, mostly. Bet this place is a real party at 3 a.m. You'd be surprised, I told him. Or maybe you wouldn't. The small talk helped. It made the space feel less like a steel throat and more like just another room I was walking a patient through. We stopped on telemetry without drama. The doors sighed open. Beige hallway, nurses in blue scrubs, the murmur of a TV down the hall. All of it blessedly normal. For a second, as the indicator over the door flickered and died, I thought I saw that almost zero shape again, like a number trying to form and giving up. Then it was gone, and I was too busy getting the guy into his bed to chase ghosts. I took the stairs back down. I told myself it was to stretch my legs. For the next few hours, I kept things boring on purpose. Main elevators, longer routes, stairwells when I could get away with it. Every time somebody said CT or MRI, I felt my jaw tighten, waiting for someone to tell me to take east. Sometimes they did. Sometimes I bought myself a few extra minutes with some excuse about maintenance. By 5 in the morning, my feet ached and my eyes felt full of sand. That's when my work phone buzzed with Samir's extension. I almost didn't answer. Nothing good comes from security calling you by name at 5 a.m. AJ, he said, skipping hello. You got a minute? I've got about half, I said. What's up? You still boycotting East service? I'm trying, I said. Why? I pulled something you're going to want to see, he said. From that 317 ride that supposedly had your name on it. My stomach did a slow, unpleasant roll. You mean the one I wasn't on? That's the one, he said. Come down. Easier to show you than explain. For once, the ED didn't immediately scream for me. No new ambulances, no code calls, just the low murmur of tired people waiting. I told Marla I was going to check something with security and headed for the loading dock. The security office door buzzed after I tapped my badge. Inside, the air was thick with electronics and old coffee. A wall of monitors cast the room in gray-blue light. Samir waved me over without taking his eyes off the main screen. Have a seat, he said. You're about to get your money's worth out of the system glitch theory. He scrubbed back a video feed and froze the frame. Hallway camera, he said. Outside East Service, 3:17 a.m. The footage was classic security cam, washed out blacks and whites, a timestamp in the corner. The service hallway stretched in flat perspective. The East Service doors sat in the center of the frame. The hallway was empty. We watched. At 3:16 and some change, the little light over the elevator woke up. The doors slid open onto the same empty hall. No bed in front of them, no figure pushing anything, just scuffed linoleum. Okay, I said. So far, this is a door opening to absolutely no one. At 3:17 on the dot, Samir said, those doors close again. They did. The gap narrowed, then met with a neat seam. As far as the camera's concerned, he said, that's it. Doors open, doors close, no traffic. But the system log for the car says it just did a full transport with you in it. He hit pause, backed it up, let it play again in slow motion. This time, just before the doors touched, I saw it. A darker smudge in the space between them, not quite shaped like anything, but occupying space in a way that made my skin crawl. A patch of shadow that shouldn't have been there. Could be compression, I said. Artifact from the camera. Smudge on the lens. Could be, he said. So I pulled the inside view. He switched feeds. Now we were looking from above, fisheye lens inside the car. End of the hallway framed in the open doors. The interior was empty. No bed, no patient, no me. At 3:17:02, the little text panel beside the doors lit up. On camera, it was barely legible, hard little green dashes. Samir zoomed in until the pixels turned to blocks. Watch this, he said. The panel flashed a greeting, Porter announcing it was ready. A moment later, another line appeared underneath, like the car was thinking out loud. It said it was waiting for a load. See anybody get on? Samir asked. The angle gave us the entire floor of the car and a slice of the hallway. There was nobody there. No, I said. Anybody hit a button? No. And yet... He tapped the overlay text at the bottom of the screen where the system info was burned into the image. According to the controller, The car got a call from the ED level, closed its doors, went to 4, opened, waited, came back down. According to the badge reader, your card made that happen. And according to the transport system, some poor bastard's chart now says they arrived on telemetry courtesy of you and this empty box. The footage played on. The car stood with its doors open to an empty corridor. Then the doors slid shut again. In the last sliver of space between them, that same man-sized absence stood a little too close to the threshold, a negative shape the camera didn't know how to render. I realized I was holding my breath. "Again," Samir said. He replayed the last few seconds. The shadow appeared. The doors closed. The car hummed. My palms were damp. I wiped them on my scrub pants. "Could it be a reflection?" I asked. "Of the rails? Something on the back wall?" "There's nothing back there to reflect," he said. "And even if there were, reflections don't tell the system your name." He pulled up another window, a simplified log of the run. "Here's the part I like," he said. "Car IDES-02. Origin, ED level. Destination, telemetry. Assigned staff, Monroe A." "What about the patient?" I asked. He clicked. Another screen. "Patient ID. Order time. Scan completed." "On paper," he said, "everybody did their jobs." Silence settled between us, thicker than the white noise from the monitors. "Maybe the controller reused my ID by mistake," I said eventually. "Some queue bug. Maybe the order got reassigned after the fact and it slapped my name on it because I'd done a similar route earlier." "Maybe," Samir said. "Or maybe the building hates blank fields." I looked at him. "You build a system whose job is to move bodies from A to B," he said. "You connect that system to a bunch of other systems that panic when there's a delay or a missing entry. Then you tell all of them throughput is king. You really surprised the machine started filling in the gaps?" "You think it's making trips up?" I said. "I think," he said slowly, "that when something happens off script, the hospital's nervous system has two choices: admit it doesn't know, or quietly write a story that makes the lines connect again." He gestured at the frozen frame of the empty elevator. "Right now, that story uses your name." I stared at the screen, at the blank floor, at the phantom shadow that wasn't anything but also not nothing. "So what do I do?" I asked. "Rule 1, he said. "Don't ride that thing alone. If something out there is happy to put you in rooms you never entered, don't give it a clean shot with no witnesses." "That's not policy," I said automatically. He gave me a look. "Neither is getting erased, AJ." A knock at the door made both of us jump. One of the volunteers poked her head in to ask about a visitor badge. Samir minimized the footage. The spell broke. On my way out, I glanced at the elevator status screen on the wall. There it was again. Porter, ES-02. Status, active. A little green dot glowed steadily beside the name. For the first time since I started working there, I had the sick feeling the building knew exactly who I was. And somewhere inside its concrete spine, something had started practicing my signature. The thing about hospitals is, you can talk yourself into anything if it keeps the board from turning red. After watching the security footage, I tried to file it under weird but explainable. Porter showing up in the logs with my name on it? Weird. The little panel announcing it was ready for a load in an empty car? Weird. An elevator running a clean trip with no one on camera and still getting credit? Weird. Weird is survivable in a hospital. You see enough of it, you learn to step around it. What really gets you is when weird starts lining up in a row. I didn't sit down that night and neatly write Rule 1, Rule 2, like some horror movie character. At first, it was just gut feelings I pretended weren't rules. Don't ride East Service alone. Don't trust an indicator that won't pick a floor. Don't let the building tell you what you did. I told myself those were just personal preferences. For a few days, that almost worked. I routed everything through the main elevators. If I had to go from ED to imaging, I cut through public areas with families and volunteers and the smell of coffee, not the back corridor that always felt 2 degrees too cold. I took stairs when I could. I let time bleed out in the name of safety. My phone did not appreciate the sacrifice. The transport app started nagging me in its polite little way. At the top of my assignment list, a banner appeared. Performance trend below target. Review best practices. Each completed trip sprouted tiny colored icons, green for good, yellow for getting there, red for somebody in an office is frowning at this. I told myself I didn't care. By the end of the week, I cared. The first time I broke one of my unspoken rules, it wasn't for some dramatic emergency. It was for a kid. Not technically a kid. 18, tall, trying hard to look older than the hospital bracelet on his wrist. His chart said syncope. His hoodie said some band I'd never heard of. His eyes said he'd never spent the night in a hospital before. I'd already brought him from the ED to the main elevators once, only to have the entire bank freeze while engineering reset a fault. All 5 doors sat stubbornly closed with the same bland apology on their little screens, and a tech with a tool bag was cursing at a hidden panel. Beside me, the kid leaned on his IV pole and looked worried. "Is there another way up?" he asked. "There's a service elevator," I said, before my better judgment could kick in. He shrugged. "As long as it's not the stairs, man. I'll pass out halfway up." My brain did the math. Ambulatory, alert, no lines, not sedated, not restrained. We'd be in and out. By the time the main bank woke up, he'd already be in a bed. "Okay," I said. "We'll take the staff route. It's less scenic, more efficient." He laughed. "I'll survive." We cut into the quieter hallway. Trash bags tied neatly outside an EVS door. A mop bucket parked under a dripping ceiling tile. That particular silence you get in hospital back corridors, like the building's holding its breath between emergencies. East Service waited at the end, still, closed, harmless. "Why is it called a service elevator?" the kid asked. "Because it's for staff," I said. "Supplies, equipment, patients who don't need the grand tour." I pressed the call button. Inside the shaft, metal clanked awake. The indicator above the doors flickered and settled into that same pale, numberless glow. I stared at it 1 heartbeat too long. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just hate that light. It always looks like it's thinking too hard." The doors opened. The familiar cold metal smell rolled out. We stepped in. I put him on the side with the rail and told him, "Hold that. I don't want you doing the fainting thing in the middle." He grinned and grabbed it. "Yes, Mom." I hit the button for telemetry. The little panel beside the doors woke up again just for us. A line of green text rippled across it. It didn't bother with full sentences this time, just a quick flicker that told me Porter had noted we were there and had decided we counted. The ride itself was smooth, too smooth. No faint rattles, no sideways twitch, just the steady glide and that low hum under the floor. He talked about missing some concert. I pretended I knew the band. My ears popped. My hands stayed just a little too tight on the opposite rail. When the doors opened onto telemetry, the real telemetry, with nurses, wall art, and the soft hiss of oxygen, the relief hit so fast I almost laughed. "See?" he said. "Not haunted." "Yeah," I said. "Told you." I walked him to his room, scrawled my initials on the little whiteboard by the door, transport completed, A.J., and took the main elevators back down. In the locker room at the end of the shift, I finally checked my phone. 2 new notifications from the transport app blinked on the screen. The first one was the usual summary for the kid. It said he'd been helped upstairs in a wheelchair from ED to telemetry. It praised the efficient route choice. At the end, the app slid in that quiet little note it liked now. Performance improvement noted. It also made a point of reminding me which elevator I'd used. Porter, with the same car ID, just in case I'd forgotten. The second notification was shorter and stranger. No patient name, no room, no unit. Just a timestamp, about 10 minutes after I'd dropped the kid off, and a line saying a transport had been closed automatically, assigned to me, with Porter listed again as the equipment. "No," I said out loud. The guy at the next locker glanced over. "Everything good?" "Yeah," I lied. "Phone's being weird." I cleared the notification. It popped back up 30 seconds later, like the app was politely insisting I really should acknowledge this story it was trying to tell about me. That night at home, when I should have been crashing, I sat at my kitchen table with a cheap spiral notebook instead. I'd been carrying those half rules in my head long enough. Time to put them somewhere the hospital couldn't quietly edit. On a clean page, I wrote, "Rules for East Service, also known as Porter, 1. Never ride it alone with anyone who can't stand on their own. 2. If the indicator over the door is blank, don't get in. 3. If the system says I did a transport I don't remember, trust my memory, not the app. 4. When the panel uses the word Porter, treat it like a name, not a cute label. 5. Don't watch security footage of that car after midnight." I stared at the list. It wasn't enough. Beneath those, I added a 6th line without really thinking about it. 6. The building remembers what you do. Sometimes it decides what you did. It looked dramatic in my messy handwriting. I almost laughed at myself. Then I thought about the empty elevator with my name in its logs, and the way the app had tried to slip in an extra trip under my ID, and I didn't laugh. I closed the notebook, tucked it into my bag, and told myself having rules made me safer. The next night, East Service made it very clear it had been paying attention to my list. It started testing which rule I'd break first. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and everything is technically where it should be, but it still feels like somebody's been in there touching your stuff? That's what the next shift felt like. I went in with my handwritten rules folded in my pocket like a relic. I told myself I finally had a spine. No solo high-risk transports in East Service. No stepping into Porter when the indicator wouldn't commit to a floor. No letting the app tell me what I supposedly did if I didn't remember doing it. Then I hit the ED doors and the board hit me back. Every bed full. 2 ambulance stretchers parked in the hall. A family arguing in Spanish at the desk about wait times. A nurse pressing gauze to something I didn't look at too closely. The kind of night where the air itself feels triaged. Marla spotted me and snapped her fingers. AJ, thank God. I've got 3 going to imaging, 1 to tele, and a dialysis transfer that's already an hour late. I looked at the chaos, at my empty hands. Okay, I said. Where do you want me first? She slapped a chart into my palm. CT chest with contrast, room 12. He's anxious, so we gave him something to take the edge off, but he's still breathing on his own. Take east. Main elevators are jammed with visitors. I can't do a sedated solo in east, I said, before my courage got a chance to fade. Risks recommendation, she cut in, already fielding someone shouting her name. Not policy, and he's not fully out. He can answer questions, sign forms, complain about my shoes. I need that CT done before day shift steals my slot. He's medicated, I insisted. If he falls, then document you locked the rails and followed protocol, she shot back. We don't have bodies for perfect tonight, AJ. I need you with me, not against me. There it was again. The guilt that comes wrapped in patient care language. Say no to the elevator, and somehow you're saying no to the patient. I'll take him, I said slowly, but I'm using the main elevators. She blew out a breath. Fine, just get him there before radiology starts calling me by my first name. For an hour or so, I held the line. I took the long routes. I waited behind families and volunteers. I watched my times creep up, every trip taking 10 minutes instead of 5. My phone kept score. Little colored flags started appearing next to my completed transports. A banner at the top of the app politely reminded me my trend was dipping. Another message suggested I review optimal routing practices. I ignored it, mostly. Around the middle of the night, the app stopped hinting and started assuming. I tapped to accept a simple lobby to med-surg assignment, a discharge who'd decided they wanted a wheelchair instead of walking, and found the request already filled in for me. Origin, destination, patient name. And tucked underneath, in place of a blank field waiting for my choice, was a line that said the system had gone ahead and picked the best elevator for the job. It had picked Porter. I tried to tap the field, change it back to no preference. The app didn't care. The route was locked in with this bland confidence, like it was doing me a favor. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. A nurse glanced up. Problem? Just my phone trying to be my boss, I said. It was a discharge. No IV, no sedation, no monitors. I told myself, again, that I was bending my rules, not breaking them. The patient chatted about their parking ticket. Porter took us up. The panel stayed quiet. Nothing obviously wrong happened. Until later, when I checked my completed list and saw every single assignment, one after another, stamped with the same little compliment. Optimal route selected, Porter. It felt less like a suggestion and more like a habit the hospital wanted to stick in my muscles. During a quick break, stirring powdered creamer into terrible coffee, I cornered Samir. Did they mess with the app? I asked. It's pre-selecting routes now. He frowned. Mine doesn't. I just get status. He pulled his own device out and poked at it. They pushed some smart suggestions update this week. Maybe your end got the brain chip. It's not suggesting, I said. It's deciding. Every trip says Porter is best and won't let me change it. You can still pick a different elevator in real life, he said. The app can't drag you into the car. He said it like a joke. It landed like a warning. Sure, I said, until management starts asking why I keep ignoring their smart routes. He sighed. You want me to file a ticket with IT? Yes, make the subject line loud. He did. I saw the email later. Samir complaining that the new routing thing was stepping on staff judgment. IT replied with corporate cheer. The algorithm, they said, was designed to reflect real-time efficiency. If Porter was showing up as the smart choice, that just proved Porter was outperforming the other cars. Performing better, moving faster, hitting metrics. If the ride felt wrong inside the metal box, that wasn't part of their data set. Around 2 a.m, while I was poking at a stale sandwich in the break room, my phone buzzed with another helpful reminder. There was an overdue transport listed. A woman in room 9, flagged as a fall risk, assigned a bed up on telemetry. According to the app, the request had come to me 20 minutes ago, and I'd already accepted it. I never accepted this, I said. A notification bar blinked at the top. Contact, destination unit. Delay exceeds target. Out at the desk, Marla was already gesturing at the board. "Room 9 is ready to go," she called. "Telemetry is holding the bed." "I just got the order," I said, holding up my phone like evidence. She pointed at the screen. "The system says you took it ages ago. Can you just go? If Telly doesn't get her in 15 minutes, they're giving that bed to someone else." "She's a fall risk," I said. "She needs someone with her." "Half this board is a fall risk," Marla said. "You're not carrying her up a fire escape. You're pushing a chair. Take your time, but take her." Guilt again. Bed management roulette. If I refused, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was potentially stealing a bed from someone sicker in the waiting room. In room 9, the woman looked even smaller than her chart had made her sound. Oxygen tubing at her nose, telemetry stickers on her chest, that tired, resigned look people get when the hospital's lights have been in their eyes too many hours. "You're my ride?" she rasped. "That's me," I said. "We're going upstairs where they can watch your heart a little closer." "Long as you don't drop me," she joked faintly. We managed to stand her into a wheelchair, my hands hovering close but not grabbing. I double-checked the brakes, footrests, belt, blanket. I heard my own voice offering the same reassurances I'd given 100 patients. The main elevator bank out front might as well have been a traffic jam. Visitors, volunteers, a transport from another unit arguing about priority. One of the cars had its doors open while a tech knelt in front of the panel with a screwdriver. Another alert popped up on my phone, scolding me about the delay. "We're taking the quieter route," I told my patient. "Less waiting." The back hallway swallowed us in its cooler air. The hum of the ED faded. The fluorescence seemed a shade dimmer. At the end of the corridor, East Service waited, its doors closed, its blank indicator glowing like a tired eye. The rules in my pocket pulsed like a second heartbeat. Never ride it alone with anyone who can't stand on their own. If the indicator is blank, don't get in. She wasn't sedated. She was holding the rail on the chair. She was talking to me. My brain took those tiny technicalities and twisted them until they felt like loopholes. "Service elevator?" she asked. "It's quicker," I said. "Less traffic. I'll go slow." I pressed the button. Metal clanked behind the wall. The white light above the doors stayed stubbornly featureless. No floor number, no letter, just that pale wash. "You all right?" she asked, hearing the silent stretch. "Yeah," I said. "I just hate that thing." I tried to smile. "Looks like it's thinking about something it shouldn't." The doors opened. The smell rolled out in layers. Oil, warm rubber, that over-cleaned metal scent, and something under it that tickled the back of my nose, like dust that had been cooked and cooled 1,000 times. I rolled her in, locked the chair, checked the belt again. "Don't let me go," she said softly. "Rule 1, I said. Nobody falls on my watch. I pressed telemetry. The light under the buttons snapped on. The little panel beside the doors lit up too, words flickering across in the same tiny green font. This time it didn't just say Porter was ready. It spelled out in a few efficient words that it had noticed both of us. One staff, one patient. Destination, telemetry. All neat, all tidy, all claimed. The car started moving, and that was when I realized my rules weren't the only ones in play anymore. The building had its own. I tried to ignore it. After that ride with the fall risk lady, I went home, showered, and collapsed on the couch. For a few hours, the only system I cared about was the cheap fan buzzing in my living room. When I finally picked up my phone and opened the transport app, it felt like checking grades I already knew were bad. The summary for room 9 was waiting. It read like a perfectly normal trip. ED to telemetry in a wheelchair. Safe transfer, vitals stable. At the bottom, the equipment line gently reminded me I'd used Porter. The comments wrapped it in praise. My route choice had improved throughput. Under that, in smaller text, there was one more sentence. The route had been auto-adjusted to maintain performance. No mention of the wrong floor. No mention of the blank hallway. No error, path in use. The system had ironed those wrinkles right out. I scrolled down. Tucked under the main summary sat that second, stubborn notification. The ghost transport. No patient, no unit, just a timestamp after the real trip, and the note that it had been closed automatically with my name and Porter attached. The app was writing its own memory of my night, and it wasn't interested in my version. I closed the app, opened it again. The story didn't change. "You don't get to do that," I told the phone. "You don't get to edit reality and call it a feature." The hospital, obviously, disagreed. A new announcement pinged in my inbox later that day. A group email from admin celebrating impressive gains in night shift transport efficiency. It talked about creative use of service routes and staff willingness to adapt. It thanked teams like AJ's without actually naming me. The part that made my skin crawl was the screenshot. A dashboard full of green bars. One of them was labeled Porter Utilization. Apparently, my haunted elevator was officially a success story. The next shifts blurred together. Long nights, too many patients, not enough staff. I tried to stick to my rules. The building tried to shape new ones around me. The app's suggestions came back, stronger. Every assignment rolled in with Porter already picked, the line about optimal route now baked into the request instead of tacked on afterward. Whenever I ignored it, a little yellow warning icon popped up next to my completed trip. One night, around 1 in the morning, I accepted a new transport from the app and didn't even get a chance to read it before the system filled in the blanks for me. Origin, destination, patient. Correct. Equipment. Already set to Porter, no option to clear it. When I tapped the field, it didn't open a menu. It just shook once, like I'd poked a locked door. The message at the top of the screen said the app was helping by learning my preferences. My preferences, I said. That's cute. That same night, on a run to imaging, I got something worse than a suggestion. We had a stroke protocol in room 14. They'd hit him with the usual meds. Neurology wanted scans 10 minutes ago. The patient was borderline, not fully out, but not exactly participating either. Lines everywhere, monitor beeping. The ED nurse looked like she'd sprinted a marathon already. "He needs a nurse," I said, "at least a tech." "We're short," she said. "The ICU hold is actively trying to die in room 3, and half my staff is in there. RT'll go with you. He can handle the oxygen." "Not in East," I said. "Main bank only." "The main bank is down," she said, stabbing a finger toward the hallway. "Engineering says 10 minutes. Neurology says if this scan isn't started in 10, they're calling a delay on us. So it's Porter, or you get to personally explain to the stroke team why their orders sat." There wasn't time to fight her and the board and gravity all at once. "Fine," I said. "RT's with me. We lock every wheel. If anything feels wrong, we get off at the next real floor." The respiratory therapist met us halfway down the hall, pushing a portable oxygen tank. "Service car?" he asked. "Apparently it's the smart one," I said. He smirked. "I like smart. Smart gets us back faster." East Service opened to greet us. The indicator over the door glowed its blank, indifferent light. Inside, the car was the same as always. Steel walls, scuffed floor, faint chemical smell. I rolled the bed in, locked the casters, double-checked the side rails. RT took the far side, one hand on the rail, one on the oxygen tubing. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I said. "We're doing it anyway." I pressed the button for CT. The light clicked on. The little panel beside the doors blinked awake, words flowing across in that too small font. It greeted Porter by name, counted 2 staff and 1 patient, and announced imaging as our destination like a cheerful host reading off a reservation. The car rose. Halfway between floors, something changed. It wasn't a dramatic jolt, just a subtle shift in the hum under our feet, like the motor had suddenly hit thicker air. The floor tilted a fraction to the left, then the right. My stomach followed. "You feel that?" RT asked. "Probably just the counterweights," I said, too fast. The panel flickered. New words pushed the old ones out of the way. It advised us that our usual path was in use. It said it was recalculating. It did not ask for permission. The car slowed to a stop. We hung there, not quite between breaths, but close. No floor chime, no door opening. Just a boxed-in quiet that made the hair on my arms rise. "Hit the alarm," RT said. For once I didn't argue. I slammed my palm on the red button. Nothing happened. No bell, no intercom crackle. Somewhere in security, Samir's console should have lit up. Somewhere in engineering, a fault should have appeared. In our little metal world, there was just silence and the low buzz of fluorescent lighting. The panel updated again, in that calm little voice it used when it thought it was being helpful. It informed us assistance was not required. It assured us the route had been optimized. Then the motor dug in and started climbing again. When the doors finally opened, they opened on the right place. Imaging, hallway, techs, CT suite. We rolled the bed out on legs that didn't feel entirely steady. "See?" RT said. "Little hiccup, that's all." "Yeah," I said. My handprints were damp on the rail. On my break, I went straight to security. "You get anything from the East Service alarm?" I asked, not bothering with hello. Samir looked up from his monitors, genuinely puzzled. "What alarm?" "In the last half hour," I said. "Between ED and CT. I hit the button. The panel said we didn't need help." He spun his chair toward the elevator status screen and brought up Porter. "Car shows clean travel to imaging," he said. "No faults, no alarms, no door holds. As far as this thing's concerned, you had a textbook ride." "That's not what it felt like," I said. He tapped through another menu, brow furrowed. "No notification on my side," he said. If you tripped the alarm circuit and the system decided you didn't need me, it never told me you asked." "If," I repeated. "You hear yourself?" He looked tired in a way caffeine can't fix. "Ajay, whatever this is, it isn't just about you anymore. You're just the one who keeps noticing." That landed like a stone, because he was right. Lila with her invisible passenger and heavy cart, the auto-accepted assignments, the ghost transports with other people's names. Porter wasn't a personal haunting. It was a new behavior spreading quietly through the building. I walked back to the ED like the floor plan had shifted half an inch while I was gone. By the end of that shift, a different kind of decision had hardened in my chest. If the system was going to keep using my name to make its stories come out neat, I wanted to know how far it would go without a patient as an excuse. I wanted to see what Porter did when it didn't have any bodies to move, just mine, with no order, no origin, no destination. Not as part of the job. As an experiment. And yeah, as a bad, selfish kind of test. If something in this building was rewriting my nights, I wanted to catch it in the middle of a sentence. So a few shifts later, when the board was briefly calm and the hallways finally exhaled, I did the thing that every horror story tells you not to do. I decided to ride Porter alone. I wish I could tell you I stormed straight from the ED into the elevator like some martyr. I didn't. I stalled. For 2 shifts after that failed alarm, I did the responsible thing. Avoided Porter when I could, took the stairs more than I needed, let my times go ugly. The app scolded, the little performance banner nagged, admin sent out another "We're all in this together" email with a chart they were way too proud of. And all the while, the ghost trips kept stacking up. Not just mine. I started seeing other names in the incident summaries when someone left a printout unattended. Lila from EVS, another transporter. Once, even Marla's name showed up as assigned staff on a trip I knew I'd physically done. The building was learning to spread its stories around. That actually made my decision easier. If this wasn't just about me, then hiding from it wasn't going to fix anything. I could transfer, quit, move states. The software would still be here, hungry, waiting for the next night shifter with a badge and a conscience. So on the 3rd night after the stroke protocol ride, at around 4 in the morning when the ED finally hit one of those weird, brittle calms, I went to security. Samir looked like he'd grown into the chair. Same headphones, same half-empty coffee, new set of dark circles. "Tell me you're here to fix the vending machine," he said. "I need a favor," I said. He put the coffee down. Those words are never followed by anything good. "This time it's at least honest," I said. I pulled a crumpled notebook page from my pocket and smoothed it on his desk. I'd written 3 short lines in my messy all caps. "If I call you and don't talk, I hit the elevator alarm and it didn't work. If a trip shows up with my name and no patient, it wasn't me. If I'm gone more than 10 minutes, pull the footage and don't let anyone fix it." Samir read them, starting to joke, then stopping halfway through the 2nd line. "Where are you going?" he asked. "East Service," I said. "Alone." He stared at me like I'd just said I was going to lick the breaker panel. "You're kidding." "I wish," I said. "I need to see what it does when there isn't a patient or an order. No origin, no destination, just me and whatever it thinks transport means." "Need is doing a lot of work in that sentence," he said. "You could also need to go home and watch trash TV." "If I bail," I said, "this thing keeps learning in the dark. If I go, at least one person is watching it while it improvises." He scrubbed a hand over his face. "Okay, we do this. We do it with seatbelts. He spun to his console. I'll pull up the service hallway camera and the interior cam for Porter. You call me from your cell the second you're standing in front of the doors and don't hang up. If anything looks wrong, I scream at engineering and yank a manual stop. And I screenshot everything until my fingers fall off. Deal, I said. He tapped out a few commands. On one monitor, the East Service hallway came into view. The crash cart nose, the EVS door, the closed metal doors of Porter. On another, the interior fisheye feed showed an empty car. Go, he said. Before I remember I like you. The walk down there felt longer than usual. The back corridors at 4 a.m. have a particular silence. Not peaceful, just waiting. The hum of the building sits on your skin. I turned the corner. The crash cart was exactly where it always was. The call button glowed dull yellow in the half-light. East Service looked perfectly ordinary. My phone buzzed in my hand. Samir's voice came through the line. I've got you on camera, he said. You look taller on security footage. Good, I said. Maybe Porter won't recognize me. I thumbed the call button. Behind the wall, the machinery woke with that familiar clank. The indicator over the doors flickered from dark to a flat, off-white glow. The little side panel lifted a line of green text like it was clearing its throat. The car was idle, no assignments pending. Panel just told me Porter's bored, I said. Status screen agrees, Samir said. ES-02 is sitting pretty on the ED level. No active calls. Doors opening. Now. They slid apart. Inside, the same box I'd ridden 100 times. Scuffed linoleum, brushed steel, faint smell of hot metal and industrial cleaner. No extra shadows, no bleeding walls, just an elevator. Interior feed shows you're alone, Samir said in my ear. If the building is going to eat you, it hasn't opened its mouth yet. Comforting, I said, stepping in. The floor felt normal under my shoes. The air was a little cooler than the hallway. I moved to the center of the car, facing the doors, phone pressed to my ear like a lifeline. Still got me? I asked. Loud and clear, Samir said. Hallway cam sees closed doors. Interior cam sees one anxious guy pretending to be fine. Let's see what it does with a manual ride, I said. I reached out and pressed the button for telemetry. The light under the button snapped on, then blinked off again, like it couldn't decide. The car didn't move. The panel beside the doors woke instead. A line of green text scrolled across. No active transport ticket associated. It suggested I accept an assignment first. It just told me I need a ticket, I said. Samir rattled keys. You don't have one. Your status on my side is idle. The grid thinks you're on break. Porter disagrees, I said. The panel wrote another line. Manual ride unsupported. It very helpfully recommended I exit the car. Yeah, no, I said. You could step out, Samir said quickly. We log this as system refused manual staff use and call IT in the morning. He was right. That would have been the sane choice. Instead, I pulled up the transport app. On my completed list, I picked a recent ED to CT trip, the kind Porter loved. At the bottom of the summary, I'd never scrolled that far down before, there was a new little option. Repeat route. Of course you're here, I muttered. What? Samir asked. They added a run that again button to my history, I said. Guess how much I trust that. What happens if you tap it? He asked. We either find out, I said, or it finds someone else who's too tired to notice. Before he could answer, I hit it. The screen blinked. A fresh assignment banner slid in at the top. Same origin, same destination, same note about using Porter. It marked the job as already accepted, like I'd agreed before I knew it existed. In the car, the panel updated the second the app did. The letters announced a new assignment. 1 staff, no patient, destination, imaging. Okay, now I don't like this at all, Samir said. Status board just lit up with a phantom transport. It thinks you're walking someone who doesn't exist. The car lurched. Not the normal stomach-lifting start. This felt sideways, like the building had grabbed the car by the sides and yanked it through something thick. My ears popped so hard my eyes watered. The cheap fluorescent panel overhead flickered, turning the walls into a stuttering slideshow. Interior cam just dropped, Samir said, voice going tight. I've got hallway view, but inside you're gone. Status says Porter is engaged in internal process. That isn't even a thing. The panel changed again. It quietly informed me the route was internal. External calls were disabled. The air felt heavier, like humidity without heat. My skin prickled under my scrubs. Okay, I said, mostly to myself. You wanted to see this. Watch it. I dug my notebook out of my pocket with shaking fingers and braced it against the wall. My pen bit into the paper. Logging this, I said aloud. Solo ride, no real assignment. Elevator refused manual use until I gave it a recycled trip. Route now labeled internal. No floor number. The panel blinked. For a second, the text blurred like it was out of focus. Then it wrote something new I hadn't seen before. It had detected a narrative and was incorporating. A cold line ran down my back. Samir, I said. It's reacting to me writing. In English? He said. His voice sounded a little far away. Because on my end, your badge just fell off the world. You're not on any floor. Porter shows offline. This is the part where I strongly suggest you get back out of that thing. Doors are still closed, I said. Give me... I didn't finish the sentence. The machinery sighed. The doors began to open, not the usual smooth parting. They met resistance at first, slowed like they were pushing through a crowded room, then slid the rest of the way. On the other side wasn't the ED or CT or any floor I knew. It was a hallway that looked like it belonged to our hospital and absolutely did not. Same kind of cinder block, but painted that particular beige we used upstairs. Same style of ceiling tiles, same humming lights. The air smelled like antiseptic and hot wiring and something else, the dry, stale tang of a space that got cleaned but never really used. Doors lined the walls at regular intervals. Each had a small plaque in the same font as every other department sign in the building, but the words on them weren't units or room numbers. The first one said, Room A1, holding. The next, Room A2, adjustment. Further down, Room A3, correction. My throat went dry. A J? Samir's voice crackled in my ear. Where are you? The cameras still show Porter closed on the ED level. I'm in a hallway that doesn't exist on your blueprint, I said. But whoever designed it stole our signage package. I stepped to the threshold, not quite crossing it. The floor beyond looked like every other hospital floor. Waxed, slightly tacky from cleaner. Too normal. You step out, I lose you for real, Samir said. This isn't funny anymore. Was it funny before? I asked, but my voice sounded thin. Behind me, the panel glowed. It calmly announced that we had arrived and that it was now waiting for confirmation. Somewhere further down that nameless corridor, I heard a sound. Very faint, very far, the squeak and roll rhythm of gurney wheels starting to move. I realized, standing there between the normal world and whatever this was, that for the first time since Porter had learned my name, the building wasn't just rewriting my nights after the fact. It was opening a blank page and inviting me to step inside while it wrote. The wheels got louder before anything actually appeared. Not by much, just enough that my brain could start filling in the blanks. 4 casters, one of them squeaky, something heavy on top. A gurney if you grew up in hallways like mine. A J? Samir's voice buzzed in my ear. Talk, I've got nothing. Every camera says you're standing in front of a closed elevator that hasn't moved. I'm not, I said. My voice sounded small in the beige corridor. For me, the doors opened. I forced myself to narrate. Cinder block walls, painted the same beige as our telemetry, I said. Fluorescent lights humming. Doors with plaques that say, holding, adjustment, correction. Smells like disinfectant and hot wiring. Feels like somebody built an admin meeting into a hallway. That's not on any level, Samir said. I could hear frantic typing. Badge reader has you in auxiliary space. I don't know what that even means. The gurney sound stopped. Silence pressed in. My fingers tightened on the edge of the notebook. Stay inside the car, Samir said. Please, don't go sightseeing in whatever off-brand wing the building just invented. I took one careful step forward anyway, far enough that my toes crossed the threshold. The floor beyond had that same hard, waxed give as every other corridor in the hospital. Too ordinary. That was the worst part. On my right, room A1, holding. No window, just a door with a push bar and an empty slot where a paper label could slide in. On my left, room A-2, adjustment. This one had a little glass pane, frosted. A blurred shadow paced behind it, slow, deliberate. When I leaned in, the shadow stopped. A J, Samir said sharply. Your badge just flickered. One more glitch and the system's going to drop you entirely. I'm not opening anything, I said. I'm just looking. Down at the far end of the hall, where it teed off into more beige, the air darkened. It wasn't a figure. If it had been a person, even a dead one, I think my brain would have latched onto that. This was more like a person-shaped gap, a man-sized refusal to be anything at all. The outline of a choice, standing where there wasn't a doorway. The hair on the back of my neck rose. A J? Samir's voice dropped. Status panel just changed. Porter thinks it's arrived. It's asking for confirmation. Yeah, I said. So is something else. The absence at the end of the hall tilted, the way someone does when they finally decide you're interesting. It didn't move closer. It didn't have to. The whole corridor felt like it pivoted around that knot shape. I realized, with a cold clarity, what the elevator had really wanted out of me this whole time. It didn't care about me personally. It cared about my role. I was the guy who pushed beds and signed forms, the one who turned movement into official record. Every time I scribbled my initials on a transport slip, I'd been helping the hospital's nervous system lock reality into neat columns. Now there was a system that could move people on its own. It just needed someone to keep agreeing that whatever it had done made sense. It wanted a porter, in the old sense, the one who carries the weight and takes responsibility for where it ended up. Behind me, the panel inside the car flashed another line. It didn't print a label this time, it made a request. It was waiting for me to say this ride had been real and successful. "Listen," I said, throat tight. "You don't get to use my name without permission." On my side, it was just me talking into antiseptic air. In my ear, Samir swore. "Whatever you're seeing, the system just tagged you as in transit. It's holding a spot for a transport that doesn't exist with your ID on it." The gurney sound started again, soft, just around the T-junction. I pictured that absence stepping out from behind a knot door with something invisible in tow. My hand shook as I flipped the notebook open and pressed it to my chest like a shield. "Fine," I said, more to the elevator than to Samir. "You want me in the story? Here's my version." I wrote fast, hard enough to almost tear the page, saying the words as I went so they couldn't be quietly swallowed later. "This ride is not complete," I said. "There is no patient, no origin, no destination unit. I do not acknowledge this as a real transport. If you log it otherwise, you're lying." The pen squeaked on paper. My heart thudded against my ribs. The air thickened, like the car and the hallway were inhaling at the same time. "Ajay, your badge just disappeared," Samir said. Panic edged his voice. "You're not on any level. Elevator board says Porter is offline. If you don't get back in right now, I'm calling a code on an empty shaft." I stepped backward until both heels were firmly over the elevator's threshold again. The absence at the end of the hall didn't follow. It just stayed there, patient, as if it had all the time in the world. The panel flickered, the text smeared, then reformed into two short sentences that sounded a lot like a complaint. There was a conflict between what it expected to record and what I was giving it. It had picked up an external narrative. Good, I thought. Choke on it. I kept writing. "I refuse to sign," I said, pen digging into the paper. "I refuse to be your porter. You're malfunctioning. You're dangerous. Any record that says this trip was normal is false." For a heartbeat, I honestly thought nothing had changed. Then the floor under my shoes shifted. The air pressure snapped back to normal. The smell of that nowhere hallway faded, replaced by the familiar cocktail of coffee, bleach, and too many tired humans sharing the same ventilation. The panel flashed one more time. The little letters, suddenly sharp again, admitted the route had been cut short by staff. It noted that an incident was now pending. The doors closed on the beige corridor and its patient, waiting absence like someone shutting a lid. When they opened again, I was back in the same service hallway I'd left. Crash cart poking out, mop bucket, linoleum scuffs. Samir stood a few feet away, phone still to his ear, chest heaving like he'd been running. "You were gone 12 minutes, he said hoarsely. "Status said Porter was offline. Your badge was temporarily unavailable. If you ever do that again, I'm filing a complaint for attempted suicide by infrastructure." My legs felt like someone had swapped them out for bad copies. I stepped out of the car anyway. "Did the cameras catch it?" I asked. "Any of it?" He shook his head. Interior feed froze when the doors closed. Hallway feed shows you standing there the whole time, staring at a closed elevator. Logs say Porter hiccuped, reset, no movement recorded. He nodded at my notebook. "So unless your pen was rolling tape, that's all we've got." I looked down at the cramped, smudged writing crammed onto multiple pages. It didn't feel like enough. "It'll have to do," I said. They didn't fire me. There was no dramatic showdown with administration, no exorcism in the service hallway. On paper, what happened next was boring. Risk management logged a brief communications fault with East Service. IT pushed another update. Facilities put up notices saying the elevator would be down for scheduled maintenance for a week. When it came back online, I checked the status board in security. ES-02 was there. Same car ID, same spot on the list. But the name beside it had been quietly rolled back. No more Porter, just service car. The smart routing feature in my app dissolved. No more auto-selected service routes. No more performance pop-ups telling me which elevator I supposedly preferred. For a while, the system went weirdly quiet, like a person who'd been talking too much and had finally realized someone was listening. The old logs didn't vanish. Samir printed what he could and shoved the pages into a manila folder like he was hiding contraband. We layered my notebook entries on top of those. Phantom transports, auto-closed trips, one auxiliary route with no floor number. If a building can have a guilty conscience, that folder was ours. I didn't stay there much longer. Officially, I transferred to a different facility in the same hospital network. Better hours, they said, less physical strain. Unofficially, every time I heard an elevator chime in that building, my palms started sweating. The new place is smaller, fewer floors, fewer elevators, same beige paint. I still take the stairs every time I can get away with it. Every few weeks, a mass email lands in my inbox from corporate. System updates, policy changes, new solutions they want us to embrace. One afternoon, in the windowless staff room of the new hospital, I opened one about a software rollout. The subject line called it an intelligent transport optimization module. It had a cheerful banner and a smiling stock photo of a transporter pushing a patient down a hallway that looked suspiciously like mine. Buried halfway down, in a bullet point, was a name I hadn't seen in months. They were proud to announce that the module was powered by their proprietary Porter algorithm. The text said Porter would learn from real-world staff behavior to recommend the routes they would naturally choose. Not should choose, would. The fan in the corner clacked on its axis. Out in the hall, a regular elevator chimed somewhere, that polite little ding you stop noticing after a while. In that moment, every sound felt loaded. Maybe, in some other facility in our network, there's a night shift transporter opening their app and seeing routes pre-filled. Maybe they've already ignored one ghost notification, told themselves it was a glitch. Maybe they've already bent one rule because the board was red and someone called it just this once. Buildings remember. Systems learn. If you give them enough authority and wrap it in the language of efficiency, they start finishing your sentences for you. And if you're not paying attention, they'll keep using your name in stories you don't recall living. So if your hospital ever proudly announces a new feature that renames a piece of machinery after the people who used to do that job by hand, do me a favor. Don't just laugh at the branding. Check your logs. Write your own. Tell someone what doesn't add up before the building decides it already does. And if you ever stand in front of closed metal doors under an indicator that refuses to show a floor, and the little panel beside it lights up with a word that feels too personal, ready, waiting, thank you, remember this part. You're not just stepping into an elevator. You're stepping into a version of events that really wants to be true. Make sure it isn't the only one anyone ever hears.